Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, hosted by Jahan Sator, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness. Let's tap into the discussion now. Hey, it's your host Jahan Sator here, and my guest tonight is Steven D Kelley, an ex-CIA/NSA contractor, whistleblower, inventor, activist for truth, healer, psychic, and author of the books Lasers, Cavers, and Magic, as well as Cities Under the Plane, the true story of one man's journey through science, magic, and the CIA to understand the world in the 21st century. You can listen to Steven D Kelley on truthcatradio.com. I'll let Mr. Steven D Kelley introduce himself now. Steven, thank you for being on the show. Please tell us about your journey.
I should put it on. I should just throw it back at you and go, oh, you got to work. You got to ask me questions. Oh, because I'm trying not to go on a diatribe. You know what I mean? Oh, I did this and I did that. And, I don't. Well, let me ask you this. What have you heard? Okay. I mean, what have you heard about me? Just curious.
Well, that's great. Because I wanted to say that I watched your alchemy event video first. The Occupythegetty page on Instagram contacted me, and the person's like, I know that you're a truth teller. And I'm like, oh shit, they can see my energy field. How do you know that? And so he's like, yeah, I am an associate of Mr. Kelley's, and you should watch this video. And I was like, just, doing regular everyday shit, hanging up my laundry. And he pops
you're
up.
Like, oh, damn, huh?
And it's like, okay, he obviously can see something here. So let me go watch this video. And then it took a couple of months before I decided to actually contact you, because I off and on watched a couple of your videos on YouTube and took time to digest everything. And I was like, well, he ain't lying.
That's all good. That's cool. Okay, so you saw the original thing. You saw where I talk about the Getty. That was like 9 years ago this November, which is crazy. I mean, it's over November. When I did that, it was the big 2012 thing, if you remember that. Everybody's all about the Mayan calendar and the world's going to end. And it was kind of like Y2K sort of a thing, but that's a corn vendor going by. I don't know if you can hear that. So that's where I kind of came onto the scene and blew everybody away with this whole stuff. I'll just say this, that a lot of the names and people who are like big in the industry, so-called truth industry speakers and all that, they're all gone. There's really none of them left. All the people that were big names and stuff when I was speaking, they're history. They're like, either just gone away or senile or become irrelevant or whatever. So it's bizarre. I'm the only one left. But at the same time, I'll just say that 9 years ago when I started doing this, I didn't have any clue that these people were all corrupt and that they're all being paid off. I mean, that whole truth industry, almost all of it, I'm yet to really find. I mean, except for small people like yourself that haven't, aren't getting paid off. But there was actually money coming down from the Bilderbergers, and it was going to be distributed. It was distributed by Michael Aquino, who, of course, is this big Satanist military dude. And he gave it to people like Kerry Cassidy and the guy that ran Revolution Radio and a whole bunch of other so-called big-name truther types. And they would distribute it down from there. And that's how they controlled everything. And it was when I came up with this whole Occupythegetty business is when I got kicked off of radio and everything else. And when Trump became president, they kicked me off of TV. I was on Press TV and Russia Today. I was on Russia Today at least once a week, and that's 700 million viewers. And then Press TV, of course, Press TV, that's Iran. I was on there almost every day. Sometimes they try to get me on twice a day, and they go, oh, wait a minute, you were already on today. Crap, we can't use you twice, something like that. So, and that all stopped the day Trump was inaugurated.
Interesting.
Yeah. Makes you go, what just happened,
You just kind of jarred my memory, because I remember a couple of years before Trump got elected, I was listening to something that was related to Revolution Radio on YouTube. And basically what they were saying is everything that Trump turned around and did, especially with like the FEMA camps and things like that. And I wonder if that was one of the things that they paid to have be turned into this predictive programming, or what was the case that was going on there.
I'll tell you something. I just went to Vegas and did this gig here, a few weeks ago. And driving down to Vegas, I saw a huge FEMA camp out there, And I've seen it before, but now it's like a massive facility, with like towers and buildings up on the hills and stuff. It's like, you look at it, you go, damn, what kind of prison is that? It's a damn FEMA camp is what it is. But yeah, it's right there on the border. I'm not sure. I can't remember if it's on the border of the California side or the Nevada side, but it might be on the Nevada side. That's probably why I never find it when I'm looking for it. I'm always looking for the damn thing on, Google Earth, but I can never find it. Go figure, right? But,
yeah.
Anyway, it's there. It's scary. Yeah. I'm not worried about it, seriously. If you're not fighting, if you've got fear, then you shouldn't be involved in this fight, right?
Exactly. It's a potentially scary world out there, and I think that one of the biggest issues as a truth teller that you will have is people's cognitive dissonance, but also that thing that, like Da Vinci said, that there's people who see, people who don't see, and people who don't want to see. And it's the who don't want to see that.
There's got to be there's got to be a whole nother factor there. The people that care about what they see, or even the people that care about what they see and are willing to do something about it.
Fair enough.
Right? Yeah. Because those are all legitimate categories. But that's a reoccurring issue for me right now, especially with people out there that pretend to be doing something, but they're doing it from this position of fear, or victimhood. And I don't believe we can do that. I think that we have to be, and I'm not trying to sound like a revolutionary. I mean, I am revolutionary. I want to see it all taken down. But we can't be polite so much anymore. You got to recognize this is a battle, and you have to recognize that the enemy doesn't play by the rules of civilized people. Right. And I'm not saying we go out and act like savages, but at the same time, we can't be beholden to politically correct whatever, because the enemy is going to use all our little weaknesses against us. Like, oh, don't say anything bad about this group, or don't say anything bad about this gender, or, this kind of a thing. They're going to use that against us and make it harder. You know what I mean? They'll throw everything but what's important at us. And I just find, like, for instance, I'm dealing with this Allie Carter girl right now, as you've seen in the group, of course. And it's a really small deal. I'm really kind of surprised that this would even be going on. But at the same time, it's kind of bizarre to observe so many people that are going to look at this person, this victim, and say, oh my gosh, this poor girl, yada, yada, and completely forget everything that's important because they're getting sucked into this whole victim drama thing instead of, looking at the big picture. That's really annoying.
I actually have no clue about the Allie Carter thing. The first time I heard of it was when I saw you had a video on it.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure there's not too many people out there. I mean, and I suppose it's just as well that I have to nip these things in the bud, but the whole Getty thing in general. Now, if you had not gotten that video from that person, I think I know who it is, probably Kathleen that sent it to you, but if you had not gotten that video, you'd probably never have heard about this Getty business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's only like the biggest thing in the world. You know what I mean? Seriously. Okay, well, what I tell people all the time, and I could scream this forever and hopefully people will get it, but whatever it is that you think is a problem in the world, COVID, sex trafficking, pollution, chemtrails, vaccines, whatever, slavery, corporate domination, all these things that we argue about and we protest, all these things could be fixed with this one thing, and that is Occupy the Getty. And now I'll just share with this for you, because you may not know this, so I'm just going to reiterate this, because if you read my book, you'd probably know this, or I might have mentioned this in that video you saw. But I actually sat down with somebody who represented the Templars, the Nazis, and who was the trust fund manager for the Getty, and sat down in a restaurant with this person over drinks and dinner, and basically was there when that person realized that I was the one that they had been looking for forever, that was going to destroy them. And because they have crystal ball technology, they have Project Looking Glass, and they have time travel and all this sort of thing. So they have a pretty good idea of what to expect. And here's the thing is that, and unlike something you might see in the movies, I was watching this movie Looper the other night, and it's so lame, what they're proposing. But the thing about time travel is it just doesn't work like they want you to think. And the main thing about it is that you can't go into the past or into the future, whatever, even less in the future. You can't do that at all. But if you go into the past, you can't do anything that will change the future. And if you do anything, it's going to completely alter the future. But the thing is that the universe is like somewhat controlled. It's like everything that's going to happen has already been going to happen. We don't really know if it's really going forwards or backwards. It's like the Akashic records, like a big tape recorder. But the thing is, it's kind of like an algorithm. Everything's based on cause and effect. And the bottom line is, even if the bad guys know by using technology how they go down, or who is going to take them down, there's nothing they can do about it. All they can do is watch, and they try to manage it, but there's very little they can do. And so that's why it's very easy once myself, not only did they tell me that I was the one that was going to take them out, but they also told me that there was nothing they could do, and that they couldn't kill me. They flat out said, you are in the can't be killed club. And I'm sure there's a bunch of people on Earth that are like that. But I think the reason for that is that when someone does something or is destined to do something that's going to change reality or affect the lives of everybody else, you can't change that. It's like totally written in stone.
Right.
So that's what destiny is. So people that are either at one time in their lives are, doing something that affects everybody, those people can't be touched. Now, I know I already did something to affect everybody when I did the laser stuff,
right.
Because my little lasers, well, it's like everybody's using them now. It's like the thing in battle, It's like, right? See them in the movies, you see it all over the place. Guys running around, they got lasers on their guns. That was me, So anyway, so yeah, that was changing the world, kind of.
Definitely.
Cat toys, laser cat toys. That was me.
Laser cat toy.
Hell yeah! Seriously.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good work. It's a shame that it's being used for all this weird stuff that doesn't really do anything but generate money. And
well, that's why I had to get out of it. That's why I bailed, because I knew a long time ago when I was like 20-something, or maybe not. Maybe it's a little older. I can't remember. I had a wife and kids. I was like 40. That's when I found out kind of like I found out my destiny when I was 20-something back in the 70s, because I got mixed up in some guys who were doing fortune telling and stuff. They go, oh, you're going to make $500 million doing blah, blah, blah. I'm like, really? You know, and then so many years later, it's actually happening. And basically what happened was I had a deal. The military was going to do some testing on one of my systems. And it was the system that I knew was going to be like on every single gun out there, basically, at least as far as the good guys are concerned. And it would have been just ridiculous amounts of money. But I didn't want to do it because it would have been like just a ton of dead people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And that's like sometimes you're making weapons and stuff, and you think, well, this is going to protect somebody. You know, it's going to, whatever, someone's going to hunt with it, whatever. You think it's okay. But then if like you're doing something and it's going to say, oh, the Israelis, you know that what they're going to do with it. You know, it's like you still give it to them, you're guilty. You know,
Right.
So yeah, when you get involved in stuff like that, I'll just tell you this: when you make things that control people's lives, you know, either saves lives or takes lives, it gives you energy, just like, you know, chi. It's kind of like that. That's another kind of energy, and I call it gravity. Okay, we all have a certain amount of gravity, and when you've been involved in a lot of lives like that, then you carry this ton of gravity. And I remember during Desert Storm and stuff, when they were killing all those people in Iraq, that I had been involved in tons of those weapon systems, just tons of them. And it was like, for me, it was like a disturbance in the force. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Kind of a thing. You knew it was going on. You're just like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? It's because all these people are dying. You know, you don't have to be there. You're kind of connected to it. But anyway, so that's why, one of the reasons why I do what I do now. I mean, obviously I have to do what I do now because otherwise everyone's going to die.
Right.
You know, we're not just trying to save babies. We're trying to save everybody. Even the ones that don't deserve it.
I was just about to follow up with that. You know, everybody just can have a chance. I think, when I say I think, this is something that's open-ended for me. I don't know what could happen to change it, but I try to operate under the assumption that perhaps if a situation can change, then people will change at a fundamental level, including the ones that are bad and things like that. Like, there's always a chance to open up somebody's mind in a way that they go, oh shit, I was doing that the whole time.
Yeah, but then do they feel guilty, or do they have remorse, or they feel stupid, or their ego takes over, and, you know, I didn't do that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I heard
that forgiveness is a big issue, you know, right?
Yeah, I heard the statistic that 80% of the world is the herd, and 10% is narcissists and evil people, and the other 10% are the do-gooders. I don't know how true that is.
Oh my God, I don't know. That makes the do-gooders look really bad. It's hard. That's a tough statistic to gosh, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think the herd is actually a lot worse than that. Okay, well, let me just put it this way. Everybody's got a perspective most people on Earth, obviously, have got a perspective that's based on what's going on the surface, you know, your government, your whatever, your local politicians, your police, etc. And that's your reality. But when you realize that there's this whole other world underground, and that they've got way more money and way more technology, and they've got slaves, and they live like crazy pagan Romans down there, then you have to realize that the people on the surface are like the peasants, you know, the undeveloped ones. And so when you look at people like Bill Gates or Soros or any Donald Trump, take your pick, you realize that they're still just big ants. You know, they're still, yeah, we're all still just ants. They're just really big ants. You know, it's stupid.
That makes sense.
We got to be. That's why the Getty's so important. We got to focus on that. That's our weak spot.
Yeah, I was just about to bring the focus back to that, and I'm pretty sure you might be reading my mind at this point. I do want whoever listens to this to know exactly what the Getty is, who runs it, and why it's so important that even if you don't get on your soapbox and yell it, which I don't advise because you want to get the message actually received, how do you go about educating your friends and whoever is actually receptive to it on an individual level and get them to think critically about this?
Yeah, that's pretty tough.
Well, we can try, though.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of realities that we have to take for granted. And one of the best ways to start, I suppose, I mean, like if you're really going to wake up and you really want to first realize that the reality that you think is real is not real, is you read about Tesla. Now, there's only a few decent books about Tesla, but if you read like the more modern biography, I think it's called Man Out of Time or something of this nature, then you will see like 100 years into the future, and you'll see the world that we should have had if not for people like J.P. Morgan and ultimately Rothschilds and Edison and people like that. And that's what's it. So the first kink in your armor, the brain, is that you're going to realize that it's what you were taught in school is false, you know, and the true heroes, the ones that you were taught were heroes, were merely criminals that took advantage of the real heroes. And that's why you start with Tesla. And then after Tesla, there's a couple of good people to read about. There's a lot of good people to read about. One, of course, is Wilhelm Reich. And this is a great introduction into orgone and his interpretation of yin and yang energy. But that's just his interpretation of yin and yang energy.
Yeah.
And then another one is Victor Schauberger, of course. And Victor Schauberger, of course, they look at you as a Nazi if something like that. But because, of course, he worked for Hitler. But the thing is that Victor Schauberger was a master of fluid dynamics, which is basically what this energy is. And he was able to create UFO-type devices and energy, free energy type generators, things like this. So those are kind of key. You need to know about that. And then another big thing along the awakening, and I think this is what a lot of people start with, and that's Bill Cooper. Okay, you know Bill Cooper, right?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Okay,
everyone should start with Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper, of course, is dead now. He's one of the martyrs that I reference as a hero and influence of my own work. And he was a liaison for the Pacific Fleet out, and that means that he was basically a communication officer, intelligence officer, reporting directly to the admiral of the Pacific Fleet. So he came across his desk everything. So he knew everything. And he knew about the Greys, the aliens, all the plans, and that was a big wake up. Now his perspective, of course, was from the perspective of the U.S. military. And if you have any ability to get close to any of these things like I did, of course, my perspective was the CIA, the NSA, and then eventually I dealt with Billy Meyer, which was like Palladians, practically dealing directly with Palladians. Everyone has a different perspective. The Greys will tell you one thing, the reptiles will tell you one thing, the U.S. military will tell you one thing, the Russians will tell you one thing, the CIA will tell you something else, and on and on and on. History will tell you, and when you start getting into this stuff and you start getting exposed, you got to go back and learn how to learn. That's one of the first things. As soon as you get all this stuff, just like, your brain's going crazy with all this information. So what you have to do is you really have to go start over from scratch. You have to go back to square one, start over, rebuild what you think is going on. Eventually, if you're lucky, you're going to do that again. You really got to do that again, because as soon as you think you know all the answers, then you got to start over. But what happens is you have to learn how to become an observer. so that you can process this information and store it away without attaching your emotion to it. Because if you start going, oh, that's crazy, you're not going to learn anything. You got to stop thinking you know the answer. And if you learn something that just doesn't agree with you, was that dog? Yeah, hi, dog.
Yeah.
If you like, when I first learned about reptiles and stuff, I thought, oh, this is insane. This is too much. I can't, come on. But I couldn't just reject it. I had to file it away, and put it in the old to be observed later file. And if you start out with attaching the label to something like, well, this is propaganda, came from this guy who's questionable, something like that, you'll never learn the information. The other thing is you also have to get information from everywhere in places you don't want to get information.
Absolutely.
Right? Like what amazed me, like in the Bible, there's all these references to the Babylonians and Baal and all. I mean, I found out that religion was a big part of this CIA business really early on. And I had to kind of figure out what the heck, why these guys think this way. I had to go back and relook at history and relook at all these religions and things that happened throughout time.
Are there any examples you can give that really triggered that?
Like which aspect? I think you know where I'm leading with this, but the first big thing, of course, is that I realized that we weren't the good guys, and I realized there was no polar opposites are ridiculous. There's no one side's good, one side's bad. The bad side's just as good, the good side's just as bad. And that's where I realized the yin and yang, and that's when you realize that the yin and yang is actually spinning. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always shades of gray, depending on where you're looking at. It's always, if you go around the circle, you pick any section of the circle, there's always a little bit of black and a little bit of white. It's never perfectly white or perfectly black. That's our reality. That's this reality right here, this 3D. And when we go to beyond that, we don't even go to 4D, we go to 5D. That's another thing I learned about this stuff, is the matrix. That's the matrix. We skip levels. It's kind of interesting business. Densities is really super important. You got to learn about densities because that's the real mechanics of the universe. And if you want to understand how all this stuff works, you got to understand densities, because it's like stepladder up to the top,
Yeah, I'm on that cycle now of relearning for like the fourth time, where I have to go back and question things. And to talk about the densities, Barbara Hand Clow, I don't know if you know anything about her work or anything like that, but
she talks about it.
Yeah, she's one of the only people I've heard actually describing the different dimensions and the densities and those kinds of things and all the different.
Well, I'll tell you, sometimes someone will tell you something, or you'll hear somebody talk about something, you won't realize what it is they're really talking about. Like, I had this one woman who was on a show I was doing, and she was talking about the 12 elders or something of this nature. It was like a whole nother, and I realized what she was referring to was actually the Holy Spirit. And I didn't learn that until I was actually talking to my own altar, and I was trying to get him I was trying to figure out what the heck, I had the opportunity, so I had a lot of questions. I want to know what was going on, specifically my connection. I'm like, what is it, my connection to this altar? What do I have to do with any of this stuff? And that's when the densities was brought up, and I found out that this guy, my altar, was actually from the 8th level of density, which is just below the very, very top, and just above Ascended Masters. And it was a level where the entities merge. Okay, so in other words, the individuality starts to merge at that point. From level 7, there's still levels of individuality, like the Ascended Masters of individuals. But in the Holy Spirit level, those entities merge, like 12 entities will become one entity or whatever, and then there'll be like 12 of those, so, and I'm going on my perception, what I was told in my perception, because when I'm being told the stuff, I can kind of see a little bit about what they're talking about. And then I realized that these other people were essentially describing the same thing. But apparently this Rambo character that I talk about is one of these 12, I call it 12 pillars. I call it the 12 pillars because to me they look like pillars. Other people describe them as elders or whatever, but Rambo's supposedly one of these 12 entities, and this entity is made up of at least 5 other entities that I've been told of. To me, I would think there'd be more, but I know there's at least 5. And I've been told about, I've heard a little bit, obviously I know the most about Rambo, but I know there's another one after Rambo, kind of close, it's very similar, but is like a total monk, looks like a monk with the robes and bald and all that sort of thing. And it's sort of like Rambo, only the alternate Rambo, anti-Rambo. Okay. You know what I mean? One's all spiritual, one's all military kind of a thing. And then there's another one, I think that's a woman, and I don't really know much about the woman. But supposedly I'll hear about it eventually. And then there's 2 others that I don't know anything about that I will supposedly hear about when the time is right. But that's all I know. But so mechanically, it seems to me, if you look at these different levels, that if you're trying to correct something on a lower level, it's got to be done from a higher level. Right. So Satan or whatever is supposed to be some pretty advanced entity, at the very least an angel. Lucifer is supposed to be an angel, whatever, and that's up there at level 6. So you think, well, Jesus is higher than level 6, but apparently it skips. Okay, it's that matrix thing, so that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. It's going to go from 8 to 6. Okay, so 7's not dealing with it, it's 8's dealing with it. And it's just like when we graduate, we don't go to 4, we go to 5. Okay, heaven, or what we consider heaven, is actually 5. And 5 is where we come from. It's where we assemble. It's where we spend most of our time. It's where we decide to go on these learning adventures where we go down to 3 and have these lives on 3. So that's what we're doing. We're coming from 5, but we're having these experiences and adventures. It's like going to a university. Okay, and we'll graduate after we've experienced all these lives. But the thing is that as you go up in cycle, as you go up in levels, densities, everything takes longer, much longer. So, for instance, when an animal dies, the time, their lifespan, of course, is shorter than that of a human somewhat, but what's also shorter is their soul life, meaning they're going to reincarnate rapidly, really soon, almost, right away. And they're going to live their life cycles relatively fast. So in other words, an animal might go through 100,000 reincarnations, whereas the human is going to go through 1 million reincarnations. And the higher level as you go, it's even longer. Okay, so you're there even longer. So that's why, but to us, this seems like eternity. Okay, and it's just like hell. Hell is not an eternity. People go, oh yeah, you go to hell, it's eternity. No, bullshit. I actually found out firsthand from Rambo that hell, it's only like a few years, what we would consider a few years. But I'm sure it seems like eternity to you when you're in it, but it's not really hell per se. It's the lake of fire. There's a lake of fire. Bad guys get tossed in the lake of fire, but they come out. They come out the other side, and everything's all forgiven and it's all good, and they get on with it. So it's not like they tell you. So it's really not a bad thing. I can think of at least a couple of entities that I've had to deal with who were bad guys, who went through that process, and they're like on my team now. But I didn't know any of this was going on. I said, hey, what happened to so-and-so? And they go, oh, well, we tossed his butt in the lake of fire. I'm like, really? He says, yeah, but he's out now. Do you want to talk to him? He's over here. He works for us now. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, he says he's sorry. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you really can't.
Anyway, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I think we got a little bit off topic because we were supposed to be talking about the Getty and who runs the Getty and why.
Well, let's educate the people. Yeah, huh?
What do we do to get in there?
All right. Well, first of all, just a quick review. At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, one of these things every 3 months. And they've been doing it since, they've really been working on this stuff since the 50s. But a good portion of our gross national product, the real gross national product, about half of it goes into these bunkers. Okay, and all the money that's stolen from the IRS and from the customs and from the drug seizures and all that forfeiture program all feeds this program, goes into this black budget program. So they do this under the concept of continuity of government, which means that if we get attacked by the Russians or there's a great flood or the aliens come, that somehow our society, our great republic will live on. Well, needless to say, it's not the people, this is the elite. So at the very least, we should be jealous or we should be upset that they're taking our money to build these lavish castles underground that we will never see. Now, another big fact that everyone needs to understand is that every single one of these bunkers, including the ones that are in foreign countries that are friendly to us, that have treaties with us, they're run by the NSA, the National Security Agency. Now, the NSA we associate with people like Ollie North and people like that, and I'll just cut to the chase. My association with the NSA wasn't just the NSA. It was the Ollie North gang, and the Ollie North gang worked directly under Robert Vesco, who was the #1 mafia guy in the entire world, and he ran what we call the Rothschild-Khazar Mafia, which is still running the world today. Soros, of course, is on another thing, but this guy, he had a #2 man, Donald Nixon, nephew of Richard Nixon, and it was Don Nixon that basically recruited my brother and I to get involved with these people, and I was the one, we thought it was the CIA. We always thought it was the CIA. From the early days, that's what we thought. And when I was working with the LA North Gang, I thought it was the CIA too. But they were doing the Contra killing and everything else. But the bottom line is, this is a mafia organization. So the CIA and the NSA are controlled by this mafia organization. It has nothing to do with the U.S. government. They basically control both parties. At one time, the Italian mafia controlled the Democrats and the Jewish mafia controlled the Republicans. But now it's just one mafia. The Jewish mafia took over the Italian mafia. So the Chinese mafia, Italian mafia, the Colombian mafia, Mexican mafia, all these mafias now are all under one mafia, which we call Intertel. Okay, and Intertel, of course, was done by this Robert Vesco dude. Well, anyway, that's where I got in. I was hired or got involved with a #2 guy. Now Robert Vesco got arrested. He got into some crap with my brother, and actually Don Nixon got into some crap with my brother. He ran back to Cuba to go bitch about it to Robert Vesco, and while they were bitching about it, the Cuban government busted down the door and threw his ass in jail. Both of them. Where Robert Vesco subsequently died some years later. The United States was trying to get him out of jail, and they were trying to extradite him on some BS political contribution thing to Richard Nixon for, it was like a few $100,000, which was nothing. But anyway, how is this involved with Getty? Well, I love tangents. The United States basically lost World War II, and that was at the Battle of Operation High Jump, which took place in Antarctica. And we talked about this Schauberger dude that made the Nazi UFOs and stuff. Well, yeah, the Nazis did have UFOs and stuff. They had all kinds of crazy technology that we didn't have. And when we chased them up into Antarctica, that's when they were pushed up against the wall, and they got some help from the people that live inside the world, and they came out and kicked our asses. And the result of that was the United States was essentially split in two. So everything west of the Rocky Mountains is now Nazi, and everything east of the Rocky Mountains is Zionist, or what we call Khazar Rothschild Mafia. So now it's two sides of the same coin. Essentially, they're both sides are satanic, so it's just two sides of the same coin. But the western half of the United States is the Nazi half, and that is the half that controls the Getty. So each one of these sides has all these bunkers, and of course the Getty is the main bunker for that side. Now the Crown of England, is on the Nazi side, and everybody goes by the Magna Carta, which is the deal that the world's been running on. It's like the worldwide constitution that's been going on since 1500 AD. Anyway, according to the Magna Carta, the crown, i.e. the queen and all that, is the boss, and everybody's got to bow to the queen. Even though they look like they're all enemies, no, they're not. They all work together. They all work under this big treaty. So it's like Nazis, Jews, that's all a big farce, okay? In fact, the Jews isn't even the thing. It's the Sabbatean Frankists out of Turkey who came up with all this. They're the ones that took the Masons and turned it into the Illuminati. I mean, before the Sabbateans came along in 1700 with Adam Weishaupt and Meyer Rothschild and Jacob Frank, they took that Satanist nonsense and they incorporated it into the Masons. Took over the Masons so they could get this stuff, spread all over the world. Before that, they were just a bunch of damn bricklayers. But anyway, but those are the guys that are running everything. So what can I say? But as far as the Getty, why is the Getty important? The Getty is the crown. The Getty is the throne of the crown. And the Getty is like the big throne, and whoever takes the throne is going to take the crown. So to beat this enemy, to take over the world, you don't just kill everybody. That's what they want you to do. What you got to do is take the crown. It's only through taking this crown that you can control the rest of them, because they will be compelled to do what you say. So this is why I have to take the Getty, because I got to do this. Now, people aren't going to like it, but this is the thing. There's so much money down there. There's so much power, technology, and everything that we need here on the surface, that the lives of the people that are down there right now are extremely greedy. They don't want to share this with all the people that live on the surface. They just want to kill everybody off. They would like to see all the people on the surface of the earth dead for at least 100 years or so, and let everything green up and get nice and wild and clean like it used to be. And then they can live underground and be environmentalists and be superior and all that. It's like Noah's Ark. But they want to control it. They want to have pure races. They want to have, like, for instance, if you're Italian, they want you to be 100% Italian. If you're Greek, they want you to be 100% Greek, yada, yada, yada. They want everybody to be like dogs, to be like, they don't want any mutts. They don't like mutts. They're very racist. That's the thing. These guys are racist as all hell. The reason, they basically wanted me to be like, I don't know what the hell, Prince or some stupid thing. I mean, I think it's like being an antichrist, It's like, in other words, it's like if they know that you're going to destroy them, they're going to do everything they can to get you on their side, to convince you that you're special and you should be one of us and yada, yada. And what I did basically was said, that's not fair. Because, like here in LA where I live, there's a lot of people, 10 million people in one relatively small place. And there's a lot of fine ladies out there. And you know what I'm saying? It's like they want to kill them all. You know what I mean? It's like, what are they thinking? You know what I mean? Right. It's like, my God. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's, at the very least, it's not fair. So I had that choice, and I decided, well, screw this. I'm going to do everything I can to expose them and tell everybody about what they've got going on down there. and make it so they can't hide it. But the thing is that everyone thinks, well, what do we do? We're going to go in there with pitchforks and guns and take it over. No, we're not.
Right.
They have to give up. They have to hand it over. They have to do it really soon. We have to not kill them, and they have to hand it all over. That's the deal.
Okay, so how would you go about not killing them and getting them to hand it over is my question.
Well,
way to go.
First of all, I know, really. But see, that's what I want. Me personally, this stuff makes me rage, right? I rage about this stuff. And I can't understand. I've been raging about this stuff now for a long damn time. And people think I'm nuts. But how can you not? How can you know about this stuff and not be pissed off and not want to do everything in your power to make it stop like yesterday? You know,
right.
There's no vacation. There's no going out and having fun while you know this stuff is going on. You know, it's if you got to do something. You got to do everything in your power to do something. And at the same time, because of what I know and because of what I know that's going on down there, I know that they're not going to just give up unless they know that we won't kill them. And I know that the reason why they want to kill us is because we're savages to them. We're like smart animals. We barely know anything. We are not spiritual. We are not service to others. We are not all these things. We have to, as a society, change into a service to others society. We have to completely change over this greed-based society. And that's been going on for thousands of years. So we're going to go back to something that's completely foreign to most people that are alive today. And this is how we elevate spiritually and physically to the point that we will be worthy to take responsibility for our earth. Because here's the thing. If I was to tell you the secret to go down there and get the keys and open that place up and liberate everything that we need to liberate, would everyone be worthy? What would they do? Would they go in there like animals and destroy everything? And you know, because this is the stuff I hear. You know, like the Trump crowd, they're like going, oh, we went in there and we killed everybody and we blew it up and we got body bags. It's like, really?
Yeah.
First of all, we paid for it. You know, we paid for those underground cities. We're not going to be blowing them up. BS. And second of all, there isn't enough dynamite in the world to blow all those things up. You can't. Right. You couldn't do it. So if someone tells you that they're blowing them up and rescuing children, horseshit. And one of the biggest ways you know that's BS is whenever you hear the misinformation people try to tell you about the rescues that are going on, they'll always tell you that they were in tunnels. The children were found in tunnels. We went into the tunnels. Yeah. It's like, really? How about the big, giant, city-sized bunkers? Those aren't tunnels. Right. You know, let's hear about that. Let's hear about the gold. You know, and people actually there's people out there right now, they're so convinced and listening to the BS, they go, oh, that bunker's already been cleaned out. I'm like, really? And yet that museum is still operating and Mr. Getty is still walking free, and I don't see hundreds of thousands of children walking around, and we don't see all this technology, and we still have the COVID nonsense, we still have chemtrails and everything else. I mean, give me a break. It's like you're dealing with animals. I mean, seriously, these only animals could be that ignorant. When you don't understand the reality or the nature of a reality that you can't comprehend, it's easy for someone to come along and dismiss it and say, oh, it's nothing to think about. Well, obviously, because your brain isn't even programmed or wired to think about it. So the thing about this Getty mission is that I could tell you what's down there. I could tell you what it's like. I could tell you all these wonderful, colorful, dramatic stories, or I could just tell you to open the damn door and look inside. Right. And then you'll see for yourself. And I already know that when the day comes and they do open the door and the secrets are revealed, it's like Pandora's box. The world will be changed overnight. And that's why I know that none of this has happened, because I don't see the world having changed. And most people, where they're going to be rolling around on the ground in fetal position when they realize what's really going on, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we have to, our job, like those of us who say, what's the Occupy the Getty mission? Yes, I want people to be angry and I want them to understand the reality. I want the enemy to be afraid. But at the same time, I want people to get over the fear, get over the pain, open their minds up to learning all these things that they've got to learn, because we as a people, as a society, as a culture, have to advance if we want to survive this transition, because this is the transition. And all these vestiges of the previous life, our governments, our monuments, all that stuff, it's got to go away.
Right.
It's all got to go away. What we think is the law, that's got to go away.
Yeah.
So
it's all false anyway. I keep trying to tell whoever I can that I think is going to at least open a corner of their mind to it, that this is a transition phase we're going through right now. Yeah, it looks pretty dark.
Hardcore.
And it has to be this way for things to change on some level. I try to communicate that, and maybe you have a different perspective, but this is one of many last-ditch efforts to try to get people to stay in the mindsets. And when I remember how that first came up for me was when I was a spiritual person, quote unquote, that I realized that a lot of this wasn't adding up. I realized that what they're doing is they're giving you the basic information, redirecting you right back to the same old greed and fear-mongering. And that's how I realized that the majority of these things that are allowed in the mainstream are allowed for a reason, and it's
they're controlling it.
Turn you right back around so that humanity doesn't wake up fully. And I wonder what's the next thing that's going to happen, because here we have this, what people call the global awakening, and I rolled my eyes at it. It pisses me off, to be honest. One of the few things that really genuinely pisses me off. And
I know, they totally stole it, huh? Totally hijacked it.
They've totally hijacked it. And they're all still in bed pulling the covers over their heads and trying to go back to sleep. And
trying to turn it into some political thing.
Yeah, it's either about that or it's about, meditate and do yoga and,
ignore the evil stuff.
Change your
Don't give it energy.
Forgiveness and all those kinds of things. And that's all great. That's all a starting point. But if you, and I say this a lot as well, when you really truly meditate, I'm not talking about doing guided meditations on the Calm app here. I'm talking about really turning the lights off and meditating for hours on end. Something completely different happens to you when you stop watching the news, because they're all, like you said, the Zionists and all that stupid shit trying to tell us what to believe. When you really get rid of that stuff and you kind of actually go into yourself, you realize that everything is set up a particular way, and there's no way that you can't if you're actually meditating. And if you're actually paying attention, there's no way that you don't come to that realization. So there's something that happens to people who think they're meditating, but what they're really doing is glorified breathing. That they're just rehashing the same old fears in a different way, and the same old behavioral patterns in a different way to maintain whatever is the program of the 1%. And
it's interesting. Well, no, I mean, for me, the meditation thing is really, it's just about achieving calm. And yeah, you really do have to get rid of those distractions. Music. I mean, we all love music, but it's like you got a song in your head, you got a lyric in your head. That's not calm. That's not quiet. So yeah, I don't listen, I don't drive anymore, but I didn't have it. Somebody stole the thing out of the, CD player out of my car and never put a new one back. You know what I mean?
They were doing you a favor.
Yeah, they were doing me a favor for sure. But no, you do need to learn how to listen. That's what it's really about. And you know what else is important is you have to learn how to ask questions.
Absolutely.
You know, because like a lot of people will. One time there was this one dude, he had like angels in his house. He had like a portal open up. He says, "Oh, I got these angels in my house. What do I do?" I said, "Well, why don't you ask them a question?" He says, "They're not telling me anything." He says, "Because you're not asking them questions." You know, but it works the same way. If you want to know something, like if I was trying to invent something and I'd want an answer to what I should do different, I would ask, and I would get, the inspiration would come. And the inspiration will always come to you. If you're asking a question, either you'll go straight to the answer on Google, Wikipedia, whatever, will just pop up in front of you. That book will open up to the right page, or it'll just come into your head. It'll come. You know, but you have to achieve that calm. You have to listen, and you have to be confident. You have to go, "Oh, that's the answer." You can't go, "Oh, I must be imagining something," you know. Yeah, confidence is important.
You said exactly it. You got to learn to listen, and you got to learn how to ask questions. And the majority of humans these days they're either on social media scrolling through that, they're on YouTube listening to someone give them information, and so they're not questioning it. And just because somebody's an expert doesn't mean that they actually know anything. They just might be an expert at bullshitting you. And it's important that people. Even to all the listeners that will hear this, if you don't like what we're saying, why? You get what I'm saying? Like, don't take what we're saying 100%. But why Why don't you feel comfortable? Ask yourself those questions, because you're not going to gain any insight. If you just listen to something, you go, okay, yeah. Steven D. Johansson.
Well, you got to file it away. Okay. What I was going to say is that. A lot of times people don't think. They think they're thinking, but what they're really doing is they're feeling. They're like, "Oh, I feel this way about what I just heard. I feel good or I feel bad." And they misinterpret that as they're thinking or they're analyzing. But no, they're not. They're actually just feeling. So that's something where we really got to learn to separate our emotions from this stuff. Get really flat. I'll just throw this out there, is that it's like a roller coaster. And you are constantly having these highs and lows, and sometimes we feel compelled to express ourselves when something's bad or something's good. And it's like, really? You're going to constantly be coming up with more colorful adjectives to describe these highs and lows? It's ridiculous. You've got to maintain kind of a level, flat thing, because especially when you're dealing with like what we're doing, which is a battle. There's going to be downturns and upturns. Great things are going to happen and bad things are going to happen. And if you let any one of those move you in either direction too much, you're going to lose your effectiveness. So it's like when your comrades are falling by your side, you can't stop what you're doing and run to their aid. You've got to keep moving forward and focus on the objective. And by the same token, when you have a victory, you can't sit there and get all excited and celebrate. You got a long way to go. And by the same token, like I'll give you an example. Like, let's say somebody was donating money to me, and somebody gives me $20 and someone else gives me $200. It doesn't matter what the amount is; they're going to get the same amount of thanks. Right, gratitude. It's like, what are you going to do? Right. You get all excited. The bigger the amount, it's like someone gives you a really huge amount of money. What are you going to? You're going to go. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got to keep that stuff kind of limited, and then imagine like being a world leader, and you've got these ridiculous events taking place. You got to be pretty stable. You know what I mean? You got to project a very stable, strong image. And it's like when you're dealing with rich people, the same thing, or people who are supposedly special. I think they're special. You get all excited because one person's special. You treat them different. You know what I mean? Once again, you got to have that. Doesn't matter where you go or what you're dealing with, you're going to project the same kind of output. So pretty hard for most people to do. Kind of a tangent.
Yeah. But relevant, because the more people that hear this, the more they can understand that they're still not thinking for themselves. Sorry.
Yeah. I think when one of the questions you had was like, how do you convince people, and how do how do you deal with it? Now, I'm not the best example. You probably see me go off on people, just totally go off. But I think that if you are in control of your emotions and you can be logical and approach somebody not adversarially, then yeah, you could probably have a much better opportunity to convince them. But there's another thing. If you plant the seeds, they're going to eventually, the person will come to some self-realization eventually. But also at the same time, we don't have a lot of time left to wake up everybody that we might want to try to wake up along the way. And a lot of people are going to be just lost. And it's like the COVID thing, the vaccine, if it's not a vaccine, of course, but this thing they're injecting into people is going to kill the people. It's going to do horrible things, and it's going to make them contagious to people that are not injected. It's just a horrible, horrible thing, and there's really very little we can do about it. And the only thing.
Sorry to cut you off. I actually want to talk more about that because that's something that I
knew we needed to.
I picked up from the ether that I just, when this whole thing started, I actually knew that this was coming. I dreamt it. Yeah. And you know how that goes. Like you get that cognition or whatever if you're sitting around and oh no, the elites are going to do this thing. Not that it actually says that, but you get these sensory things that happen for you. It's difficult to describe sometimes because it can be all over the place, and some time passes and you forget about it, and then it happens and you're like, oh, yeah, that's actually
there it is, right in the middle of it.
And you get that feeling in your bones where you just know that you don't fuck with this thing. Don't and stay away from everybody that thinks it's normal, because they're the most dangerous people to be around. And
it is. It is scary. And it's a very emotional time for people because there's so many people that are close to us that have had to do it for one reason or another, and that's awful because bad things are going to happen. But the thing is that again, that's that exercise in controlling your reaction, because it's like we know people are going to die. We got to accept that, but at the same time, we should also use that as motivation to do something about it. And again, going out, like in Melbourne, they're having horrible stuff going on in Melbourne with their protests and their draconian measures in places like Austria and what have you. But the thing is that if the energy was being put in the right place, like the Getty, then something might actually happen. And that's why Occupy the Getty was created, because I knew that these protests and these sit-ins or whatever, these times where these people would take over, like the Bundy Ranch situation that took place around the time this all started, I knew that if I could harness that energy and I could get people to actually go somewhere and congregate someplace where it would actually make a difference and put a spotlight in a place that actually needed to have a spotlight, we could actually cause something to happen. But all these other things are just waste of time. I mean, it's like marching on Congress. I mean, first of all, those guys were savages. They were just idiots. They blew it. But if that kind of energy was put into the Getty, we'd be halfway to having our world back by now. So that's really what this mission is about. And ultimately, what I really need, at least in the physical 3D, is I need about 100,000, 10,000, 100,000 million people in LA willing to go to the Getty and surround that thing and make a big scene. And basically, they have to do this in a peaceful way. I can't have a bunch of idiots breaking laws and tearing stuff down and, damaging property and stuff. These people have to be under control. And another big thing that's going to be important is they have to have their mouths under control. Unlike movements like the Occupy movement, where everybody and their brother had a different message, everyone needs to be on the same page. They can only put out one soundbite. If someone talks to them and says, "Why are you doing this?" they all have to say the same thing. Right. And ultimately, of course, it's going to have to go to me, because when people say, "Well, where's the evidence? Where's this? Where's that?" Well, that's me. I'm the evidence. I'm the one saying this stuff. See, so as long as you have an actual person saying it, it's not a conspiracy. Then it becomes slander or, libel, right? So if I'm slandering the Getty Foundation, I'm saying these terrible things about Gordon Getty, they have every right to sue me, and then they have to prove that what I'm saying isn't true.
Right.
So that's the whole purpose.
They can't touch it.
That's why they can't touch me. Yeah. That's why I got to have all these people following me so that we can do this.
Right.
But I need these people at the same time not to be a bunch of crazy savages that want to kill and burn and everything else. They've got to be. They have to realize that we wrestle not against flesh and blood and all that sort of thing. So we have to live it. We have to walk the walk. And we have to be hard. Now, then there's the Jedi stuff, the 4D stuff. We use our psychic skills and our astral skills to go wage war against these guys in their realm, which is the demonic realm, the one we don't want to go to, the 4D. That's where these reptiles hang out. That's where the negative energy goes to when they're collecting up their loosh and all that. That's where they feed on it. That's where their dark lords hang out. So that's where we do all our fighting. And I'm one aspect of this whole Occupy the Getty mission is physical, and the other half is non-physical. And the non-physical basically is that we have an army and we do battle with these guys. And we've been doing this now since, I don't know, going on 4 or 5 years now. And a lot of the change that you see taking place in the world is because of that. So they wouldn't be talking about this stuff if it wasn't for the fact that we weren't putting the hurt on them. And I know from real-time 3D feedback that all of the high-ranking Satanists are freaking out right now because of what we're doing in the 4D.
Definitely. And they're getting a little bit more brazen with doing what they do out in the open as well.
They have to. That free lunch is going to be over, and people think that's kind of one of the bad sides of all this is that when you really put the heat on the enemy like this, they're going to step up what they're doing, because if they think that it's coming to an end, they're going to gorge, and that's what they're doing right now. They're taking in they're taking even more children and stuff like that. And
I wanted to ask a question about the children that are going missing, and I also want to talk about something that happened recently, the Travis Scott incident, and portals and things like that, because I believe that a lot of that's happening right now. Sorry, my dog's getting excited because he doesn't believe that anyone else should be fed. He is the only one.
It's feeding time. Oh, you're right. It is almost feeding time. I'm looking at that. Okay. Okay, well, portals. Here's the thing about portals. I'll just say this right away, is that the enemy uses the portals. It's of the Draco. Okay, the Draco are the ones that really use the portals. They use the portals to transport themselves back and forth, and they're not supposed to be doing this. There was a treaty that was basically entered into by the Draco, the reptiles, the Greys, and the Anunnaki with Source, God. Basically, they made this treaty with God that they weren't going to do these things, and one of the things they weren't going to do is use portals. So all this portal usage that's going on right now is very bad, and they're trying to create these things like at CERN, Fukushima. They were trying to create a portal. They did create a big portal. There's like 6 of them under the Getty that we know of, maybe 7. Yeah, probably like more like 7 at least. And where these things go are probably just on the 4D, somewhere in the 4D. But that's what the enemy does. And that's one of the things that we do in the 4D is we shut these things down. Okay, so that's a big part of our battle is to shut down these portals. So yeah, when you see guys like Travis Scott doing what they were doing, trying to open up portals and crap, that's just pure demonic crap. What can I say, you know? What else did you want to do?
Yeah, exactly. What about what's happening in Antarctica?
Yeah.
There's plenty of people out there who are truthers who are focusing on it, but I don't think that they're really focusing on the what's underneath of that.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's like one of the biggest secrets in the world, and it's not really super important, because I was kind of hoping that we weren't going to have to deal with it as a species. But here's the thing: the Earth is hollow. Okay, it's not flat, it's not a donut, whatever. It's hollow, and there's a lot of physics to support this, but there are entrances, one on the North Pole and one on the South Pole. And the Germans in 1938 discovered the one on the North or the South Pole, Antarctica, when they were doing their New Schwabenland expeditions. And a lot of people think that they built a city on the ice, which they did. A lot of people think that they built underground stuff there, which they did. But what they really did was they used their U-boats to navigate through this passage into the world inside of the world. And they were able to establish a new homeland there, which is called New Schwabenland, which is actually a size of territory much larger than Germany, but at the same time, it's relatively small compared to the other civilizations living on the other land masses inside of the Earth. Now, I don't know much about the politics of the inside of the Earth. I suspect that they're somewhat peaceful, and I suspect they're somewhat advanced. And one of the things I do know is that they will allow surface dwellers and take them inside if they're about to be part of some sort of a genocide or event that's going to kill all the Earth. So I think that when Atlantis was taken out in a previous epoch, and that was actually warfare, I think that those people were allowed entrance. I think that Nazis, the same thing. I think the reason why the Nazis were allowed to establish a society within this hollow Earth was because they were able to convince the entities living there that they were on the verge of being wiped out, which is what it looked like was happening in Antarctica when Operation High Jump was taking place. You had an American armada coming to wipe out the last little vestige of the German military, and that's why the other guys got involved. So, as a Jedi, somebody that fights these Nazis for real, because we are fighting Nazis under the Getty. They're Nazis, and a lot of the psychics, they're so-called wizards and warlocks, like they talk about. They're what we call Nazi psychics, or Vril, VRIL. Those are Nazi psychics. So technically, yes, we are fighting these Nazi psychics, but we're also very much involved in fighting the Draco. Okay. The Gray are also an issue, but not so much. On the Earth, it's mostly Draco. The Gray are actually on the moon. They come here from the moon. The Anunnaki, they come from Nibiru, and Nibiru isn't even here. It's somewhere out there on its orbit, and it only comes around so often. It was here recently, around the time of the death of Mandela. We supposedly got a visit from Marduk, who's like the head Anunnaki guy. But my philosophy is basically our job as humans, as enlightened humans, is to wipe them all out in a very genocidal way. But at the same time, it's going to be with no emotion, because I believe that the Creator allowed us little hybrid humans at this time in destiny to take that job on. So basically what's going on here on the Earth is we've had these three entities, the Greys, the Anunnaki, and the reptiles, have been kicking butt and ruling over all the other entities, which there were like 8,000 of these other entities here on Earth. I mean, different types of species. And they killed them all off. And then they created these hybrid humans, which is us. And now it's our job to take these guys down. Now, they've been running this Earth for 25 million years. So we've had basically hell on earth for 25 million years. Our job is to correct that. And we do have an advantage because we can pretty much be anywhere we want. Okay, we don't have to. We can go anywhere on the earth. We can go anywhere. We can be on different planets. We can go anywhere we want. We just show up. So in other words, they can't hide from us. But the Creator gave us these skills to do just that. And the idea is that they blew it. They violated the treaty. They've run amok and turned the earth into what it is today, and that needs to go away so the earth could go back to being the paradise resort community that it used to be. Because that's what the earth was. It was like a paradise. It was like Star Wars Cantina. You know what I mean? Everybody came here. You know, it was like we were the place to be. And these guys ran everybody off and have been making it hell on earth. I mean, hell. We need to bring it back to the way it was. And that's what this is really all about. So politically speaking, the universe is divided into two sides. It's not like Republican, Democrat. It's service to self and service to others. And the bad guys are service to self. And there's a lot more service to others out there in the universe. And our job is basically to spank these guys that have been running amok here in the 3D in this particular timeline for the last 25 million years. Mm-hmm. You know, so yeah, that's what I'm about. I mean, yeah, I'm not doing this just to save the children. I'm doing this to free the earth from this reign of these three entities. And then I get to go away and get to go back to wherever I came from.
Oh, happy day.
I know, huh? Gotta happen soon, man. Well, what do you think? You had enough?
No, I could talk about this for hours, and let's.
Oh, why don't we just do it again, man? We'll just do it again. How's that sound?
If you gotta go, let me know, and we.
I don't gotta go. I just want to take a bong hit, you know. Bongs. I've been too long without a bong hit. I need to drink some tea and shit, you know.
Okay.
Well, do you have any other questions, or you don't have any? Did you ever get anybody joining you in here?
No, I didn't. I just had two more questions, and it's about what's in the COVID vaccine, and the second one is what are they really doing with these children, and how do these children go missing?
All right, we'll start with COVID.
Before I let you say that, I want to say why I'm interested, because I know a lot of women that are mothers in my age group, and especially in America, and there's a lot of kids that just go missing from like Walmart and stuff where they live. Uh-huh. And I said, well, it has to be a little bit more than somebody runs in the store and grabs your kid and runs out and they don't see that on camera.
Yeah, it's like going to Disneyland. It's part of the system, you know, for sure. Yeah. It's a Masonic thing, for sure. Okay, well, let's start with the COVID. First of all, yes, the COVID is bio-warfare, and it is intended to kill everybody. It's not a vaccine per se, like antibody, whatever. What it is it's gene splicing. COVID is actually CRISPR. CRISPR stands for, I don't have the acronym in front of me, but it's combinations of palindromic short repeats, yada, yada. And what that basically means is that it will... They put this thing into your blood, and what it does is it gets into cells, and it first starts out in the cells of bacteria in your stomach. Okay, but the same bacteria in your stomach is like the bacteria you're going to have in your mucous membranes or your lungs or your stomach. So this is where the area attacks. First goes into the mucous membranes. It actually is going to be either come into your body in the form of a lipid or a nanobot, a real live self-replicating structure made from DNA, protein, and crystalline components. It comes in the chemtrails. They've been spraying on this stuff for years. Anyway, once it gets into your sinuses, it will basically attack the cell. It will either use one of 8 methods to penetrate the cell, and once it does that, it uses this thing called a Cas9 protein, which will carry the foreign DNA or RNA, which is basically half of a segment of DNA of some man-made crap that could have come from an animal or could be who knows what. And it'll be inside of this protein, And it will also contain the various graphene and what have you, which is essentially what goes into creating these little nanobots, and they will cut your DNA. The first thing they do is they go along your DNA inside the cell, and they find a sequence, which is where the CRISPR thing comes in. They're looking for palindromic repeats, and these sequences, they will actually cut the DNA on this at this location, and they will splice in a loop of RNA, a foreign loop of RNA. That's what mRNA is. M is marker RNA. Now, DNA, RNA, and all that is basically made out of amino acids. So right away, the first thing I'm going to tell everybody is to take lysine, Lysine. If you're not taking lysine, you're not going to live. You need to be taking lysine. Lysine is an amino acid. It will boost your immune function. Also, your DNA is made from amino acids, so this is a very important thing to have in your body. It's also very important for protein, cellular protein production, which obviously plays a very key role in keeping your cells healthy, because the protein doesn't just deliver the damn shit to your DNA, it also removes it. So this is why we need to boost these natural immunity functions so that we can do this. Once you got it in your body, you're really kind of screwed. It's going to self-replicate and it's going to spread. If you really want to get rid of it, I say try using a magnet, have very strong magnets on your body, or get an MRI. So like put a magnet somewhere on like a big artery where your blood's going to be passing, so the magnet will hopefully disable some of the electronic function, because this shit runs on RFID. Okay, they're basically RFID chips, which means that they're going to be powered by ambient electromagnetic radiation, such as what comes from your cell phone or your TV or your Wi-Fi. So my advice to you is, if you've got this crap in your body, stay the hell away from your cell phone, your Wi-Fi, or whatever. You need to protect your body so that these things in your body don't get the energy to reproduce and replicate themselves. They need electricity to do that. Okay? So there's a lot of aspects. But the bottom line is, yes, once you've done it, you're screwed. And I can also see that it's attacking one side of the DNA. So like I said, you've got your male and your female energy. Your DNA also has a helix, just like the direction of the male energy with the helix going one way and the female energy with the helix going the other way. The DNA is exactly the same thing, because it is an antenna that connects you to source. So by cutting into one side of the DNA, and I suspect what they're doing is they're cutting into the male side. So they're hijacking the male side of the DNA. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of people, especially women, experiencing ridiculously horrible periods and blood clotting. A, because this is causing clotting, and B, because by cutting into the male side of the DNA, you're totally hijacking the hormone system, and you're turning everybody into bitches. And this is just one more thing that they're trying to do. So, it's not a good thing.
It's funny because I was meditating a couple of weeks ago, and the information about the amino acids came to me. So I went out and I bought some amino acids, and then a friend of mine gave me some book recommendations. You ever heard of Vianna Stibel, Theta Healer?
Oh, no. First of all, I got to be honest with you. I avoid everybody, because this way it doesn't pollute my message. If someone says, "Oh, you're just repeating what so-and-so said." No, I never heard of so-and-so. So if they're saying what I say, hey, that's cool.
That's great, right? Yeah, so she's a theta healer. So basically what she does is she just walks you up to the plains and you talk to the creator, which is a useful thing. But she's also saying the same things about the amino acids and parasites and those kinds of things, and how to...
I'm spacing. I'm getting ready to drop off camera for a second. Go on. Don't let me distract you. Don't let me distract you. Go on.
Yeah, do what you gotta do. So,
I wasn't even ready, son of a bitch. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah.
Tell me what'd you get from that? I mean, have you tried it or what?
So, yeah, I've tried it, and it's the same place that you'll eventually go if you really do meditate and you navigate.
Have you ever done DMT?
I haven't.
You've heard about it?
I've heard about it. and I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you're afraid.
I'm not so sure. I'm not sure if I could label it as being afraid and just not very certain that what they say is exactly what it is. Right?
Oh,
so
it's natural. It is. I mean, DMT, it's that thing that comes from your pineal glands. The same thing makes you dream at night. I've done it at least 6 times. It's totally natural. Mm-hmm. I've seen people who are completely agnostic do it one time and go, holy crap, suddenly they became spiritual because they saw the other side. And if you've ever done it, you'll, more than once, one of the things you'll notice right away is you go to the same place every time. It's the same. In other words, this place you go is a place. Because when you go there, you go to say, it's like the Matrix. Basically, like if you've ever watched the Matrix movie, when he touches the mirror, you hear a kind of tone that sort of starts, the tone gets really loud, and then stops and you're in the other side. That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, so what happens to me is that I meditate and usually I get myself into a pretty deep state and I'll fall forward and I go to the place that you're describing. I just feel like, whoop. And, sometimes if I'm paying attention to what's happening in my body, which I usually have to detach from it to get there, I'll feel the drip down my throat or whatever that is. But for me, it's a tingling that happens like in the center back here, and then I go. Yeah. And so I know what you're talking about.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Don't really get that that's what that is.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You do that every time when you go to sleep at night. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Only you're doing it while you're awake. It's when DMT doesn't last very long. It depends on how you do it. Usually when these guys go out in the jungles with the shamans, they add ingredients to it that try to make it last longer because your liver metabolizes it really quick. Once it gets in your body, it gets metabolized really quick. So they'll add ingredients to like the tea that will actually make it metabolize slower, so they get these longer highs. I prefer to just take it straight, usually with some weed, but the weed will actually diminish it ever so slightly, which is no big deal. But the thing is, you can stay in there 12, 15 minutes, and you can actually come in and out. There's different ways to do it. You can do it with your eyes open. You can do it with your eyes covered. It's a little bit different because seeing the world from that perspective, it's like seeing the 4D. You can see light bodies. When you're on DMT, you could be like looking at your friends around you, and you'll recognize them, but you're not seeing them. You're seeing their light body. Okay, you're just seeing those sparkly lights, but you know it's them. You just know. But you can see through walls. You can see people in other rooms where they're standing, stuff like that. And you can also see, like if somebody's possessed, you can see this shadows, dark shadows, stuff like that. Yeah. I saw that, and a friend of mine was doing it also. He saw the same thing in the same person, so that's real. But you will speak to you. I mean, it doesn't have to be a dramatic thing, because for me it wasn't that dramatic. My lesson was relatively simple, and it applied to my mission, which was basically to communicate with people. Mm-hmm. And what they told me was, they said no matter what I did, people weren't going to listen. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, that was the demonstration. It was like I was trying to communicate from the other side to my friends who were sitting around me, and it wasn't happening. And then the voice in my head says, see, no matter what you do, they don't hear anything. They don't understand. I'm like, oh. And I realized that was my lesson. That's the big thing, because a lot of times, everyone that does that, you're going to get a big lesson.
Yeah.
Or if you have something, a skeleton in your closet, per se, you know what I mean, something that you're ashamed of, that you need to deal with, some psychological thing or whatever, something from your past, you'll be confronted with that. As soon as you get in there, they're going to say, okay, I'm your guide, and we're going to deal with this right now. Mm-hmm. And that scares the shit out of people, that right there. Because a lot of people, they know when they go in there, they're going to have to deal with that stuff. So that's just the way it is, because, you want to move on, you have to do these things. You have to train, you have to learn, you have to get past your things. Like, for instance, when one of the biggest things of all, like if you're going to be this spiritual monk-like person and have all these magical powers and be able to heal and all that stuff, you don't get to own anything. You get to have to lose everything. You get to lose your family, your job, your everything. It's like it's like trying to be like Christ. You're not owning anything. You're depending on people feeding you, housing you, everything. Yeah. But that is, so if you want to go down that path, that's how it's done. And I had a ton of stuff. I had a whole bunch of money and a ton of stuff, and it was like, I'm thinking, wow, I'm supposed to lose all this stuff? And sure enough, it was all gone. But now I can heal people and do magic. So, hey, right?
Yeah, that totally resonates, and I know I'm not quite there yet. I'm doing the work as best as I can to embrace that, because the very first thing that happened to me was I kind of went into that place, and I was in there and I was listening to like a frequency, and it was kind of like I want to say like a sine wave sound that I was hearing, and then someone just started speaking, and they basically, long and short of it is, they were like, you got to learn everything there is about psychology as fast as you can, figure out why humans think the way that they do, why they're so convinced of their own stuff, and then you got to come back out and you got to give up your music career and you got to go teach people how to breathe properly and how to think for themselves. Right?
Yeah.
And
and use your tech skills to facilitate the whole thing, huh?
Yeah, basically that. Yeah, sir. Like those 11 years you spent.
You know what I got told?
What's that?
Okay, the last time I was talking to Rambo, he told me. Of course, I haven't done any of this stuff. He said to let my beard grow out. He said to start wearing black. I always wear black anyway. And he said to start working out, lifting weights and stuff, get all studly. But for an old man, that's kind of crazy, but I used to be like all, pretty ripped. And supposedly the reason for that was that the women would like it and the men would like it. And this was going to help me get my message out there. Right. Trippy, huh?
Well, I can't say that I haven't heard that, because I have, and I do.
But that's exactly like you're getting that message. Basically, instead of doing the music and stuff, do this. Use those skills to do this.
Yeah, and I wanted to. I made the working out about actually being healthy, and using, like you said, redirecting some of that male energy when we were talking before into that, so that I don't overload, because every few days or so I would get very frustrated and I'd be like, well, why is this happening? And I realized that's energy getting stuck.
It's totally. But here's the thing about frustration. I'll tell you something, like this whole Getty business, the astral projection stuff has been kind of like a part of it for a long time, but for me, not so much. It was always other people doing it. And I just did what I did without really being conscious of anything. I don't need to know anything, But for a little while there, we were doing some really active penetrations with some people who were pretty skillful, who were capable of doing this stuff like real time. So we were like doing real time exploration and recording it. And we were coming up, the whole idea was to be like all diplomatic, right? And go down and go, hey, you guys, we're going through these doors and we want you to give up, and we want you to stop doing these things that you're doing, and yada, yada. And we would get this whole, oh, you're nobody, yada, yada. And then we'd go next step up, and hey, and it would always be, come on, give up, please give up. And there'd be the ones that want to fight, and most of the people just run away, But the thing is, it wasn't violent. It was all like diplomacy. And come on, you guys, give up. And the whole time that was going on, we had to be like agreeing not to kill anybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when you go to these levels, this is what I learned. These structures like the Getty, they don't just operate on the 3D like this level right here. They also operate on these other levels too. Okay, so you got these other entities that are there also on these other levels at the same time, occupying the same space, which means that a door from one place to another can have a lock on it that's going to work on every single level. You know what I mean? So you have to open it. You have to be able to open it from each level to open something and go from one place to the next. And we kept running into this sort of thing. And if I recall, it was almost like to go from one level to another, you had to like grow a notch. You had to like give up this and accept this. And a lot of what it meant was you had to like not be savage. You had to not be violent, that kind of thing, give up those feelings. It's like, well, if you're going to be all evil and ready to do violence, this door's not going to open, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so something like that. But the frustration part happened. I actually got this recorded on one of my shows, I think, because I started getting pissed off about this stuff and really getting tired of it. And a lot of people were starting to surround me, skillful psychics. And we were all getting this really high level of frustration because there's shit going on in the world. And one night it just snapped. And that's when it all started. Looks like we have to end it pretty quick here. But anyway, that's when it went from the diplomacy to the slaughter, full-on physical violence type thing. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, hey, you know what? There's no emotion. It's not. We don't hate them. We're just removing cancer. We don't hate the cancer. It just needs to be removed. So apparently, it's having an effect. Yeah. It's taking a while.
It'll take a while longer, but
unfortunately.
There's a lot more people out there than you would think that believe, and they're waiting for someone to get a clear head start on it. And it's like that's why I tried. That's why I wrestled with it for a while, because like I got to get him on the show, and whoever I know that I'm talking about, people I know personally that would listen to this, then they'll spread the word to their friends, and it's got to be like that, because
well, I hope so. That video that you watched, I mean, you probably watched one of the ones that was a copy. There was one that's got like an ant or something, 049 Productions or something like that. He's got a good, I don't know how many hits on there, 80,000, 40, I don't know, a bunch of hits, but that's not even the original. That's a copy. There's other copies of that thing out there too.
So where is the original? The original is longer, because that one was like 45 minutes.
I know, it's like edited. That's kind of unfortunate. I don't know if the guys that put up the original one even still have it. Maybe they deleted it or something, but now we're seeing that one. I have the original CD, and I just posted it on my YouTube. If you want to see the full length, I'll tell you, they cut out a lot of the spiritual stuff, okay? And I got to be honest with you, 9 years ago, I wasn't completely 100% correct on things. I mean, who is? I thought it's like for a while there, I thought Donald Trump might be a good guy, but boy, was I wrong, I mean,
me too.
We learned, I mean, geez. Anyway, so the same thing goes with the information back then, but one thing hasn't changed is that I'll do anything I can to get people to wake up and want to get involved, to get angry. And I'll tell you, just little words of advice. If you're at a demonstration somewhere out in the boonies, wherever, I don't care, Melbourne or Vienna or wherever, get yourself an Occupythegetty shirt, like this. And, spread that all over the place. If you're a tagger, tag Occupythegetty. Okay? Right. Hashtag Occupythegetty. I mean, I got people sending me photographs of tags in like Europe and stuff like that. And it's awesome. I need to see more of that, I mean, we got to do it. And the thing is that it's like you said, they're not going to do anything. And all we can do is if we can harness some of this energy that, the people are pissed off about COVID and stuff like that, we can convince them, if you want the COVID to stop, this is how you do it. I'll give you an example. It's like, for instance, if you don't believe that they're spraying this stuff from airplanes then you're ignorant.
Right.
You know,
I mean, there's no reason to do it in the first place. What could you possibly be doing?
Yeah.
Most
that's
I hear
step
anyone
one.
saying is it's barium and strontium and aluminum and all kinds of stuff like that. And I said, yeah, that's great, but why are they doing it?
Why?
What do they need that for?
What do those things do when you put them all together? You know, it's like it all adds up, and it's so damn obvious in your face. You know, right in your face, literally, and people haven't said anything about it for years because they're just that stupid. And if anybody says anything, oh, chemtrails, they're going to say you're crazy. And now people are dropping dead. And, you know, they don't even need the chemtrails so much because now they got people voluntarily injecting this stuff directly.
Right.
You know, and the thing is that, you know, I'm obviously a little more educated or got a few more smarts than a lot of people out there. So I know a little bit about technology and physics and what people call science. And I can hang with hell, I had a debate with a chemistry professor from UCLA who ran the department, and he was in the Telegram group, and I knew more about what he was doing than he did. And he ran it was crazy. And I did that in front of everybody in the Telegram group. You know, he was working on some secret project, and he didn't know what it was for. And I go, oh, they're going to do such and such. He goes, oh, really? Oh, wow. I never thought of that. You know, but anyway, the point is that, like I was trying to say earlier, one of the things they're trying to do is they're trying to stick this Trump guy up there as some sort of savior person because they can't have somebody like me come along and do it. They want to do it. They're going to try to hijack it.
Yeah, now they got Grandpa Biden doing it. I don't.
Yeah, he's never going to do it. Well, the whole idea of Biden is when he dies, then you get Kamala Harris, and then Kamala Harris will bring in Gavin Newsom, you know, governor of California. And Gavin Newsom is the adopted son of Gordon Getty.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. Gavin Newsom's dad is Gordon Getty's attorney, his consigliere. He, you know,
wow.
They're in business together. All these people, Pelosi, Kamala Harris, John Kerry, these are all Getty people. Getty owns those people. So yeah, I've been trying to warn people about Gavin Newsom now for a long time, and of course nobody listens. But yeah, Gavin Newsom's the one they want to be president pretty soon. He's like some royal blood prick, you know. He's like some French royal blood family. They're trying to bring back some royalty crap, and that's why Trump's doing the same thing. He's trying to be a king. He's right. He wants to come back and be a king.
So let's talk about where these kids are going, how they're getting these kids. Like, your kids are disappearing in a fucking Walmart. Like, well, how are they doing that and you don't know? You know, kids disappear at Disneyland. That was happening from the time I was a kid. I remember going to Disneyland, and my parents both held my hand. They're like, nobody's taking you.
Well, it happens really quick. You know, a place like Disneyland, they're going to have back doors and stuff where they can poop you through, and you won't even be able to get through the door because they'll lock it behind them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like the CIA, they have vans that drive around that will snatch kids off the street, and, you know, schools, shopping centers, you name it, parks, preschools. McMartin Preschool, I don't know if you ever heard about that, but that was the real deal, where they were taking the whole class of kids from some little preschool class and shipping them to some satanic compound out in the mountains of San Bernardino Mountains, Crestwell. Let's see, Crestwell, you ever heard of that? A place called Satan's Castle. And that place was connected by underground tunnels to a church. And I'll tell you, the thing about a place like that, and this is one of the things about Satanists you have to understand, because obviously, as you know, it's all about energy. But they would hold their rituals at the Satan's Castle, and it was overlooking this bluff high up on a mountain in a place called Devil's Ravine. And underneath Devil's Ravine was Devil's Reservoir. And Devil's Reservoir, of course, fed to the Inland Empire. So very often, whenever I find these satanic places where they do sacrifices and stuff, they'll do it up high because the negative chi flows downward like black goo, water, and they pollute water supplies with it. Like I found one in Encino. There's one over on the side of the reservoir in Encino that was a place where they did sacrifices run by a very well-known Hollywood guy who got involved in a plot to screw with me, and it turned on him. His name was Rick Messina. Rick Messina. Okay. He's the guy that was running all the comedy talent. People like Drew Carey and people like that, whatever. That was, I don't know if I haven't heard since this event. I haven't heard of him. I don't even know if he's still around. Mm-hmm. But that was connected to Roger Stone. And of course, Roger Stone, he went to jail. Oh, yeah, and let me see, who's the other one? That idiot, Alex Jones. Okay, Roger Stone and Alex Jones, they're like connected. They're like two peas in the pod. People don't realize it. But
talking about InfoWars, Alex Jones?
That guy, yeah, Alex Jones.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
They're connected. They're like buddies. They're connected. They both... Roger Stone and Alex Jones are both COINTEL. It's like hardcore COINTEL. And what they do is they together will recruit people to lead phony COINTEL movements. Like they were behind the legalized pot movement. They were behind the Occupy movement. And they tried to hijack the QAnon movement after I had hijacked it. And they created the Mayflower movement. I don't know if you remember the Mayflower movement. Yeah. Well, that was them. That was their Roger Stone. That was one of his things.
Wow.
Anyway, they were responsible for hacking Facebook. Remember when Facebook got shut down for like a day? Yeah. Okay, that was because of this. What had happened was Roger Stone put this team together to hack Facebook so that they could steal the digital keys that would allow them to open up one of my admin's accounts so that he could kick me out and bring some other people in and install them as admins. They wanted to take over the Facebook. I mean, I had like 30,000 followers, and back then I was like the biggest QAnon. And I was anti-Trump. And, of course, these guys hated that, because they had created it, and then I went and hijacked it. And, of course, a lot of people didn't like me for that, Trump people. But at the same time, I was a real thorn for them. So they had to hack Facebook, and that caused... First it was 900 million, but eventually, when it was over, it was 1.1 billion people got logged out of their Facebook and had to log back in and had to prove who they were. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I also had to do that. I also had to prove who I was.
Everybody had to do it. A billion people had to do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why. That's why that happened. And then, 2 days later, something similar happened on YouTube. I don't know if you remember that, but YouTube was shut down for 6 hours or something like that. Everyone's like, what the hell's going on? YouTube shut down. It's like that hadn't happened before either. That was something, I don't even remember what that was all about. But the Facebook thing, that was a big deal because so many people got affected. Even Mark Zuckerberg got affected by that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was Roger Stone. And nobody knows that. Nobody knows he did that.
Wow, that explains a lot. I mean, Zuckerberg sure did come out with his tail wagging a little bit, or so it seemed.
Yeah. Well, Roger Stone went to jail.
So,
remember?
Yeah.
Shortly after that, he went to jail on some other BS nonsense. But that's how that stuff works.
So interesting.
Funny, huh? He's only now getting out of jail.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, and before I do anything else, before I let you go, I got to ask you, what is the story with the dome around the Earth? I've got a friend that talks about that all the time. Every time I see a rainbow, I start laughing because...
Oh, my God. The dome around the Earth. Well, you could do a whole show just on that. Let me see. Do I have any tea? Oh, I don't have tea. Oh, I got water. Okay, here. First of all, there's no dome around the Earth. There is a Van Allen belt, which is electromagnetic waves, which all planets or whatever produce. All right, here's the thing. And, I'll just say this. I'll give you some credentials first because that'll make it a little bit easier. It'll save me some time when I try to explain this stuff. But my big thing in optics and in electro-optics and all that was flats. Okay, so I know a lot about flats. And I know a lot about the shape of the Earth and the physics and all that because of the geometry and math and crap I had to know to make lenses. And when you're making flat lenses, you'll know that there's no such thing as flat. There's infinite amounts of convex and infinite amounts of concave. Okay? But one of the things that you learn really early in flat making is that one particular shape, which is a convex surface that happens to be about one fringe of curvature, that is a shape that we're very familiar with. To a flat maker, that's relatively round, okay, because you can see it relatively earlier, easy. It's a fringe of light. It's a wavelength, a band of light. You can see it when you're testing it. This see it by usually using a laser or some light source with a test piece. And the thing is that curvature being relatively easy to see and relatively universal, it's so universal that it also matches the Great Pyramid of Giza. In other words, if you were to use very sophisticated measuring devices to measure things like the radius of the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza and its the square versus the round, all this, you'll find that the curvature is also exactly one fringe. Now, first of all, it takes a pretty damn sophisticated society to be able to do that, to be able to see that, and you'll see it also in the stones inside of the pyramids, like the great pieces of granite. They'll be polished to within a fringe. Now, you think, okay, well, what's the significance of that? That's the exact curvature of the fucking Earth. Okay? It's a fringe. And the reason why they could do these measurements is because they were using the Earth as the reference. You see, whenever you're building something, the technology, the level of your technology and the level of complexity of that thing that you could ever achieve the skill to be able to build is going to be limited to your ability to measure. And during that time of the Earth, the only thing they had to use as a reference or a yardstick was the actual Earth itself. Okay? So in other words, mathematically speaking, when you understand physics and advanced astrophysics and things like this, astrophysics especially, you can't not know this stuff when you do astrophysics, but when you get even basic physics, you'll get to this pretty quick. Because, like, for instance, the lenses I was making were so flat that if you were to take a lens that was, say, this, big, and you were to make it 1,000 miles long, let's say you stretched out 1,000 miles long, there would be no peaks or valleys on that thing bigger than this much. Now, obviously, you look at the surface of the Earth, we have peaks and valleys that are pretty damn big, and the Earth is much bigger than 1,000 miles. It's many, many thousand miles. So that right there shows you that it's what we call irregular. Okay, so when you have a shape of anything is measured in its spherical, how spherical it is, either either convex or concave. It's either one or the other. There's no flat. It's either convex or it's concave. Mm-hmm. Okay? The Earth happens to be convex. We can measure it. We can measure it, the convexness. But you can't see that. Now the irregularity, that's like a whole nother measurement. So in other words, if you were to look at the Earth, it's relatively spherical. It's spherical within one fringe. So if it was completely a one fringe ball, completely spherical, just a pure one fringe all around with no mountains or anything, but just a pure ball, it would be one fringe. It would be really, and if there's no vibration, you could measure it really super easy. The reason why the Egyptians could measure it super easy was because they built the pyramids just to do that. Because all the mass of all those stones made it very, very stable. And it was that stability and lack of vibrations that allowed them to actually measure those tiny, tiny increments. Because when you're using like lasers, for instance, or you're trying to make a hologram, or you're doing microscopic measurements, you've got to have an absolutely stable platform to do this. And even today, how do we do that? Big old giant slabs of granite. Now, there's even more advanced technology. They use honeycomb tables to replace the granite, but for forever it was granite. So in other words, scientists have used granite to have stable measuring surfaces for millennia, and the pyramid was one big giant stable measuring surface that allowed them to achieve measurement capability down to one fringe of light, which was the maximum that they could do based on the curvature of the Earth. They couldn't go beyond that. Now, to go beyond the curvature of the Earth, you would have to use a laser, some sort of monochromatic light source, which they didn't have. They had the sun, and they might have had some lights that they made with their Babylon batteries and all that stuff. You've seen those hieroglyphics when they had light bulbs and stuff. But when you're getting down into measuring by wavelengths, by light, which is what you'd have to do if you want to look at the curvature of the Earth, you have to have these certain things at your disposal. So, for instance, if you had a big body of water, let's say you had a pyramid, you were in the middle of a pyramid, you had a big dish, and you filled that up with water, and there was absolutely no vibrations, no air movement, nothing, and you had, say, like a laser interferometer system set up somehow, and perhaps the Egyptians were able to use interferometer laser technology, you could measure the surface of that water, and it would be exactly one fringe of positive curvature. Mm. So there's your reference right there, see? Then you would use that as a reference to something else. So their technology was based on it. Our semiconductor technology that we use today uses the same technology, only it's better. So in other words, and this is where I came in, this is what I did. I took that tolerance, the one fringe, and my job was to make it like a half of a fringe is a wave. A fraction of a wave is how we measure flatness or deviation from true curvature. So my typical really, really good part was 1/20th of a wave. Okay, that's just like uber fucking flat. Okay, so in other words, a 20th of a wave is like 400 times flatter than the surface of the Earth, basically, something like that, And that's the kind of flatness that we had to achieve in order to make computer chips. But we couldn't do that until we had a laser, and we couldn't make the lasers until we could make the lenses.
Right.
Okay?
That makes sense.
So you see where all this is coming from? So it's like originally the lenses could only be made so good, one fringe. Why? Because that's the curvature of the Earth. And then we came up, and after World War II, we came up with different light sources, and suddenly we're using monochromatic light sources that have relatively short wavelengths, and now we can measure smaller and smaller and smaller, and then we're using red lasers, and then ultraviolet lasers. Hell, the Japanese started using ultraviolet, and that's how they got their foothold in the computer industry. It's just, shit like that. But, people don't know this crap. And this is why the government can get away with so much. Because people don't know any of this crap.
Right.
It's like they'll tell you something which is absolute BS, like from a physics or scientific standpoint. It's just like the vaccine, same thing. It's not a vaccine. They're going to lie to you. And if you say something that's actually true, they're going to call you medical misinformation.
Yeah, and it's so that particular is so ignorant. Yeah, you got to be careful with disinformation because just about everything is disinformation these days. And
well, it is.
What happens to me?
You don't have to worry about that.
Is I listen to my self-knowledge. I listen to the moments of stillness where I say this isn't right. And usually, what happens? I can't speak for anybody else, but usually, what happens is things will show up to prove or disprove it.
Well, it's got to come from you. If it's not coming from you, where's it coming from? It's coming from somebody else. You don't want to be parroting something that someone else says.
Precisely. So,
right?
With the vaccine, it's been on YouTube for over 15 years, the technology that they're using. You can go look. It's been right in front of your face.
2020, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry went to two women for developing CRISPR technology and using CRISPR technology to do gene editing or DNA editing. Mm-hmm. And it's that technology that's being used. And so when they try to tell you this is a vaccine, no, it's gene editing. It's self-replicating nanobots that actually go into your cell and cut your DNA and add in a splice of segment of DNA that is not God-given. It did not come from you. It has no business being there. Yeah. You're playing God. And then what happens? Your cell reproduces this DNA, and it gets spread to the other cells via these self-replicating nanobots. And no one wants to believe that these nanobots are true. They have no clue that this stuff is even possible, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, and they just released this week this supposed new technology that comes from some frog that's supposed to be the same thing, and people are just eating that up like...
Well, hey, geez. Well, like I said earlier, we have our own natural immune systems, and they're trying to play monkey with your immune systems. And the first thing you got to remember is that this thing that got into your body in the first place was something that they made. And the technology that they're using to get rid of it is the same technology that they used to put it in you in the first place. Mm-hmm. So you got to fight it. You got to take your lysine. You got to keep your immunity strong. And I'll tell you, the best way to combat this of all, of course, number one, I should focus on this actually, is the whole service to others business, okay? Because technically, that is an energetic thing, okay? So when you become over 50%, over 51% service to others versus service to self, you actually energetically change. You're actually putting energy out as opposed to taking energy in. So you'll have a little more protection and ability to combat this stuff. Because if anything, the fact that these things require energy coming in to feed them, via the RFID function, you need to be able to put out a field that's going to prevent these things from getting the energy they need. So in other words, a lot of times, think of it as the energy is carrying information. The information has to get to the receiver. You need to block that information from getting there. And that's where your own field, your own energy comes in, and that's the best protection against any of this stuff, just to be healthy at all, is to be giving more than you take. Mm-hmm. That's really true. You want to have a strong aura. You want to have a strong field. You want to be pushing energy outward. You don't want to be sucking in. You don't want to be a taker. You want to be a giver. So it's gravity, right? You want to be a gravity giver so that that energy, that force around you, you need it to be pushing outward, not sucking in.
Mm.
It's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Well, let's end it since we go on. Let's see. Ooh, look at this. 2 hours and 13 minutes.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to listen this long.
Yeah, I was just about to say we better wrap it up because you gotta go get some tea and stuff and get on with your.
Oh, yeah. I got people probably wanting to make noise and stuff. They're like, are you done yet? So I better get over with it. Anyway, okay, final words?
No, just that I appreciate you coming on and come back on and talk with me again soon.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Hopefully you'll get some viewers. Stick it out there on YouTube. Do what you can. And, who knows? Send them. I'll just say this. If you listen this far, cool. And if you want to, say, like, get my book, send me an email at law17gun@aol.com, law17gun@aol.com. What else? Oh, yeah, join my Telegram group. He'll tell you how to get there. What else? That's really what it's all about. I mean, seriously, join the movement. If you want to know more about this whole Jedi business that we touched on briefly, send me an email. And because we're always recruiting, certainly. If you have psychic skills and you say, I've always been battling these guys, I want you doing that with me. So, for sure.
Yeah, email all that stuff over to me. I'm interested, as I haven't read the full book. I've only listened to Lasers, Caves, and
that's the same thing.
Hour that's on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, there's more than an hour. There's like
really,
I think it's like 3.5 hours. The video. I mean, I'm pretty sure the whole book is like on a 3.5 hour thing on YouTube out there. You can find it. But anyway, yeah. If you want the PDF. Send me an email if you want to know more about the Jedi stuff. Send me an email, and you're already on Telegram group, Occupythegetty / Steven D Kelley Telegram group. So you can you can talk to me whenever you want. I'm generally there, right?
Yeah. All right.
Man.
Well, thanks a bunch. Have a good night. Catch you later.
All right, you too. Let me figure out how to get out of here. Let me see. Leave. Okay. All right. Adios,
All right,
man. Peace.
This has been another episode of the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. Stay updated by clicking the subscribe button and follow on Instagram at Jehan Satur, JehanSattaur. As always, love and blessings, and thanks for listening.